Okay, got the box open. Looks like the damaged side of the box was where the intake and actual fuel injection rails and everything were, but looking at it, it doesn't look like there's any damage to the to any of this. It would have been right here on the top, and I just don't see anything. And looking around, it looks pretty good. Looks like we're in good shape. So I opened up the other side here as well. Looks like we got some wires for the running all the wiring. Looks like right there is our wideband. There's the ECU, and there's the pigtail. Got some gaskets there, and here we got the distributor. So that's awesome. One thing I'm not seeing, and I'll have to double check my order, and it might be in here, and I'm not seeing it. No, I don't see it in there either. I'm pretty sure I ordered the one with the Android tablet, and I'm not seeing that in here anywhere, unless it's buried somewhere over here somewhere, but I doubt that. So I'll go through this a little bit better, see if that's in there, check my order, and if it's not in the order, then I guess I'll have to order one. If it is in the order, then I'll have to call them and get that shipped. Working on installing the intake for the Pro Flo fuel injection, and I was taking a look at the install of the gasket. The first thing I had to figure out was whether or not these gaskets, this side goes up. So you can see on this side we have the little printed seal there. On the back side we don't. So from everything I was reading, this side should go up towards the intake manifold. The other thing I noticed is that the water jackets are blocked off just a little bit, so I'm going to trim that off. And also, I just trimmed off a little piece here, and I was just testing. Looks like the head gasket comes out just a bit, and then this kind of had a little piece that came out right here that went, and it was hitting this, and so I wasn't able to line up to my intake ports cleanly. And I obviously want that to be clean, kind of like that right there. So I'm going to trim the pieces on the water jackets, and then on the other one I'll show you the pieces that I was talking about. You can see right there, this I already trimmed the other one, but I'm going to trim this off on this one, and then I'll use my Gasgacinch on the intake, or the head side, and on the back side of these, and let them set. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and trim this little piece here. Try and do it as cleanly as possible. I don't like the way I had my clippers in, or cutters in there. I'm going to turn it around so that I'm closer to the end. And I'll go to the other side. Just like that. Same on this side. And the other gasket. Yeah, so you can see that's a lot better. There's nothing blocking the flow of the water now. On the water jacket side. Now on the back side of the intake, there's no There's actually no water intake on that, so that's just going to stop right there. But on the front side it is an intake, so we want that water to flow well. Looks like we're ready. I'm going to throw the Gasgacinch on and then put these on. Alright, so our instructions on the Gasgacinch is this stuff here. So Edelbrock makes it. You put 2 thin layers onto the head side right there, where the intake manifold gasket's going to go. 2 thin layers right there, on both of the sides obviously. And then 2 thin layers on this. Let it set up for about a minute, and then we put the gasket onto the head where we want it. So I'm going to go ahead and start right here. So on this part, I sped everything up because there's quite a bit. That's kind of boring, but you want to pan on a couple layers of the Gasgacinch, and then you want to put those on the head side like I am here, but I also did the gaskets. Here I'm doing the second layer, but do the back of the gaskets as well. And so let this set for about a minute before you put the gaskets on. There's a little bit in that port, so I want to make sure that was cleaned out. Make sure your ports line up so that you're not blocking any flow. That stuff was pretty tacky, so once I got those gaskets on there, they were set, so try and set them on as straight as possible. And then comes the fun part of laying a quarter inch bead of RTV on there. You want to get that on the front and back of the engine block where the intake meets the engine block. The one thing you want to make sure is that there's a good amount that meets all the way up to the gasket. So at the intake gasket, there's like a little notch right there where the engine block portion is, so make sure you get a good bead all the way up into there. And I had a little trouble with this RTV. You can see it's all over my hand right there, and it was just an older tube that I had in my garage that I used. I'd recommend getting a new one before starting this. And this is putting the intake onto the engine. You want to drop it down as straight as possible. You don't want to have to pick it back up or slide it back and forth on those gaskets. I use the bolt holes to kind of line it up as I look down in here. The audio on this wasn't great. I tried to record audio as I did it, but I had my fans going, so it was pretty loud. But the kit didn't come with the bolts, so I went and bought bolts from Lowe's. Comes with, the kits are 5/16 18 2-inch bolts, so I just went and bought those from Lowe's with some washers, and then I installed those in there and fit great. Didn't have any issues with it. Next part was to torque down the bolts in a crisscross pattern. Okay, interesting that Edelbrock says do a crisscross pattern starting from the inside, working your way out. Ford says start 1, 2, 3, 4, and then out to the outside 5, 6, 7, 8, and then to the inside. So I'm actually going to do that. It makes sense. So I'm going to start here, and we're going to start at 10 foot-pounds of torque, and then do the same sequence to 18 foot-pounds. 1/4 inch AT foot valve. Start back over here. Always seems to be the little things that get you on the front of the engine. You have to mark the timing, right? So taking a look down there, I don't have a timing marker on either side. Obviously I put this together, well maybe not so obvious, but I put this together, you know, bits and pieces. I did the whole top end and then the front. So I put a double roller chain in there with comp cam, camshaft. But typically the timing on a 351, this is a 408 stroker. Typically the timing on a 351 is on the left-hand side here on the passenger side. And in this case, because of where 68 Mustang's radiator is going to be, I had the water pump exit on the passenger side as well. So that's going to make it pretty much impossible to read stock location of the timing. So I did grab one. It was the wrong one. That's why I'm saying the little things get you. I grabbed one that was going to go under that side and it wouldn't go on this other side. But now I found one from Milidon that is adjustable. So it looks like it's going to bolt to these two bolts here. We'll tighten it down and then it'll sit right there and we'll adjust it as necessary. I can adjust it to wherever I want, but I'll probably adjust it further down this way just because it'll be easier to read. But yeah, I'm getting ready to throw this on and then set top dead center so that we can put the distributor in. So once I set top dead center, I'm probably gonna have to go purchase some tape because the markings on this this balancer are all on this side. I don't know if you can see them, but all the markings are on that side, of course, because that's where they're supposed to be on a 351. But because we're doing it this way, I'm gonna have to mark it by hand, get some tape, put the tape on there, and then I think with the instructions on the Edelbrock to put that distributor on says set it to 12 degrees past top dead center. I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to double check those instructions, but either rate, I'm gonna have to be able to read the degrees. So that's where the tape comes in. So like I said, it's the little things that always get you. I'm gonna work on this now. Okay, so I mounted that to the bolts there. It was a little tough getting to this inside bolt, so you just kind of have to lift this up and put the Allen key in through there, and it fits. It's just a pain. And now what I need to do is set this so that it's at a place I like it, not riding on the balancer obviously, but riding where I can see it. And so I'll set it probably at that angle right there. There's a bolt inside. You can see it, that middle bolt there, inside there, that I need to set angle, and then once I set the angle, I can set the height where I want it with those two outside bolts. All right, and that's what it looks like all mounted. And you'll see I made a mark with my paint pen on the balancer there. That's my first mark. Basically, what I'm doing is the process of setting top dead center or marking top dead center. So I've already put in a piston stop right there in piston 1. You can see this is where the spark plug normally is, but there's a piston stop in there right now. With that in there, I turn the engine clockwise as far as it'll go until the piston stopped the engine, and made my first mark. Then I'm going to go ahead and rotate this the opposite direction until it stops again, and then I'll make my second mark. Halfway between that mark is top dead center. All right, so this is ending up being my top dead center here. This middle line, you can see there's kind of two lines, they blend together, but the one on the left was just a mismeasurement. Ended up getting this one on the right here. That's halfway between these two lines. I got that first one on there, went, that doesn't look like halfway. So I remeasured it and did it again. So there's my top dead center. Now I'm gonna get some tape, mark top dead center with the tape, and then that'll wrap around and give me my degrees. Tape is specific to the balancer you got, so mine's for a 351 small block Windsor. It's going to be all the same, the 6 3/8 diameter, 6 3/8 diameter balancer, and so that's the tape I got. I just bought the $4 Summit tape. Got pretty good reviews, so we'll see how that goes. And this is that piston stop tool. Essentially, you just screw this into the first cylinder on the Windsor. It's right here, number 1 on the passenger side, closest to the front. You just screw that in, screw this middle part. You can see this kind of just moves pretty freely. You screw this middle part in about halfway, and then, oops, well. And so my big question was, how do you know how deep to set this, right? So I looked all around, and then I felt kind of silly when I thought about it. It doesn't really matter. You just need it to be in there deep enough to stop the piston. Because if I set this up, so that these two lines end up being 1 inch apart, then I set my top dead center is going to be a 1/2 inch between those two lines. If these ended up being, a 1/2 inch, then it'd be a 1/4 inch from here to here to get to my top dead center. So it doesn't really matter how deep you set this, just as long as it, stops the piston when you rotate the engine. Always rotate the engine by hand, because you bump that with the starter, you're going to smash it into there, and that's going to be bad. But smash your piston into this. But if you rotate your engine by hand, it comes up to it gently and does its job. And that's the part number of the timing tab that I got from Summit. It was Milidon. So I got my tape from Summit. Got it on my balancer there, and right now I've got the timing set at 12 degrees before top dead center. That's where we need to be as far as setting the distributor in there. I had to take the valve cover off real quick because I wanted to make sure I was on the compression stroke. So these guys, this will move when it's on the non-compression stroke. These will move, and then once this exhaust side closes and then we approach top dead center, that's when we know we're on the compression stroke. So took that off. I'm going to go ahead and put that back on and leave that at 12 degrees, and then we should be able to install the distributor. So I was getting ready to install the distributor, and you can see it down there, the oil pump shaft that's right there in the center was kind of laying off to the side, and so I found some stuff online and essentially take a 5/16 socket like I have here. I put it on the end of a screwdriver, and you can see I taped it up because I don't want it falling into the oil pan. And then I just spun that thing until it engaged, and you can feel it engage, and then now it's centered in that hole. So hopefully that'll let the distributor drop in now. On the instructions from Edelbrock, it talks about rotating the distributor to so that the rotor's pointing towards the stamped 1. Well, there is no stamped 1 on this dude, but what we do have is inside there's a what's called a short tooth. Let me turn some light on there. So you can see that tooth is narrower than this tooth. So you want this short tooth, as they call it, hitting that sensor. That black thing there is the hall sensor. And so I'm going to rotate it just a little bit. And we rotate counterclockwise, so should be just entering the sensor. That's a little bit off, but I'll rotate a little bit more in there. So it should be just entering the sensor. And then the other thing I noticed is that the top of this has a 1 marked on it, and there's only one way to line this up because it has a notch as it drops onto the top there. So there's only one way to put this on. So that 1 will line up to the rotor, and then that sensor will be just entering, or that tooth will be just entering the sensor. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and drop this on. So I gotta find that location. And hopefully it drops down. Ran into something a little frustrating because it's out of my control. So essentially I was trying to get the distributor to drop in, and just wouldn't drop. And so I messed around with it a little bit, and I saw the oil shaft was offline, so I used this 5/16 to line it up. That fits snugly onto that oil pump shaft, and so it still wouldn't drop in there. So I grabbed a bolt and then checked it against this 5/16, and that's 5/16 bolt right there. And when I checked it against my distributor, you can see it doesn't fit. So there's no way I'm going to get this distributor on. So I've emailed Edelbrock, and hopefully they reply back to me and get me a replacement quickly. All right, looking at where I'm going to mount the ECU for the fuel injection. Right there is where the blower motor was, and the box for the heating system would be right here. This is kind of behind the glove box right there. So kind of in the middle, you can see there's the painless fuse box right here, and then just to the right of that, I was thinking of mounting right here, just to the right of the fuse box. And then my idea is I'm going to get the Vintage Air system, and that uses a block off plate right there at the blower motor, and it has a couple holes in it for the AC lines that'll come through. And I was planning on just leaving the wires there, cutting a notch in that block off plate so that I can put the wires here, something like this or something like that, depending on what works best. So I gotta wait on that, but I'm gonna go ahead and leave this in here. I'm not gonna bolt this onto the firewall yet because that Vintage Air system also has some brackets that go back to the firewall and mount to the firewall, and I don't want to get in the way of those. I want to make sure this is going to route behind that as well cleanly. Looks like we have a relay we have to mount to the firewall as well. This is the ignition So that's going to go to the ignition from my painless somewhere. I'll figure that out. And then this is it looks like another capped off relay or something, I'm not sure. But I have that in the car, and I'll probably have to mount that somewhere. But for now, I'm just gonna leave this right here so that I can work on the other side, on the engine side. And you can see where that's coming out of the blower, the hole in the firewall where the blower goes. And I'm gonna start hooking some things up here. These are the connectors for the injectors and the coils, things like that. So that's gonna actually set on the side here, and then I got the O2 sensor that's actually gonna drop down once we get the headers and everything. And then this is the actual rest of the connector. This connector connects to one of these guys, and then you have your injectors and your temp sense and all that. So I'm going to kind of connect this up and lay it on here loosely, and then see how it looks, and hopefully route things. So after looking at the instructions, you have the injectors labeled on each of these. So you have injector, and you can see it's INJL4 on that. So this is going to be the left side, which is the driver's side, and then 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then the right side will be 1, 2, 3, and 4, same from front to back. Okay, so I got all the injectors plugged in on both sides. I think what I'm going to do, and this is kind of a mess right now, but I'm going to run those along the fuel rails. But right now I'm just plugging in the other parts. So we got our fuel pressure right here, and gotta find these other ones. And the main thing is, like, so for instance, here's, if I can find it here, the TPS, throttle position sensor. So that's going to go right here, and I want that, obviously I don't want it like crossing over all these cables right here and looking ugly. So I'm going to kind of route this nicely so that it connects into that connector up there in a nice, neat way. And I'll probably come up underneath like so and plug it in right here. So I got that plugged in now, and you can see I got one over the top and one below that, so I don't like that. I'll probably unplug one and route them the same. So I'll do that here in a minute. But just to give you an idea, that's what you don't want to do. I mean, this looks kind of crappy and a little chintzy, so you want to like pull this off and then run this back through here. And now you can look at it, and it looks better as you pull this together.